welcome to Past, Present, and Future, or Three Questions, the podcast where we learn about people's career journeys, how they got to where they are today, and where they'd like to go to next. I'm Parrots Cohen, a technologist and a wordsmith, and in my time in industry, I've been fortunate to work with both large companies and small startups, alongside a number of very talented and hardworking individuals. This podcast is some of my conversations with them, where we learn about their journeys and what motivates them. If you'd like to be in the podcast, please feel free to reach out. You don't have to have a certain level of seniority or a number of years of experience. We all have something to share and learn from each other. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast or get involved in the collaboration, we'd also like to hear from you. All right, looking forward to our journey together as we learn more about each other and enrich ourselves in the process.
Oh,
Hello,
there it is.
everyone. We are very lucky today to have an awesome guest with us on the podcast. Hello, Adam.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me.
All right, let's take it from the top. Tell us about kind of that early stage, the beginnings of your career, and kind of how that all came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a good origin story. We'll pretend I'm like Superman a little bit, right? I grew up in a point in time where media was the end all be all, right? And that's all there was. I had a goonified growing up. Cable television became omnipresent, and MTV was sort of like the pinnacle of where you wanted to be. And I had always known that no matter what I wanted to do, I wanted to somehow get into the entertainment and content business. I just was trying to, it took a while for me to figure out like what that lane ultimately was going to be. And where that all sort of catalyzed and happened was when I was in school. I went to school and I quickly realized I had launched a radio show, sucked at that. And outside of the 10-foot radius of people who could actually hear my like college radio playlists, there probably wasn't going to be much of a future in there, but I recognized that I had the ability to potentially drive both the sports, entertainment, and sort of content and creative business by way of the commercial side. So I made it my job while I was in school to figure out how to get internships inside that world or as close to that world as possible and really pursue a career there. And ended up getting into the advertising world and quickly realized that I didn't want to be an order taker and I wanted to control what that narrative was, right? Like, I think everybody has always heard, oh, my friend says they watch the show or they go to this site or this is a creator that they follow. Um, Even at an early on stage, I recognized I was getting that feedback and I was like, why is that person qualified to provide like strategy on how you engage with consumers and what that looks like? So I quickly flipped to go into a brand side journey and I worked at PBS leading the primetime brand, got to do some really cool stuff with like Martin Scorsese around like Bob Dylan promotion. But what was calling me was like the Mecca of home, which was Northeast New York. And I was like, I got to get to Viacom, got to get to MTV. So did everything in my power to come back up the Northeast and work at 1515, which I was ultimately successful in doing by way of joining the music group, which was VH1, MTV, and CMT, and cut my teeth on how you are able to position and talk about audience in the music landscape when you're not actually a sort of like content owner, right? And once I was there, it was sort of glorious because Viacom allowed me to break a lot of rules and what I mean by that is I got to dabble in strategic partnerships by brokering third-party deals that helped advance the brand. I got to write some soft consumer product lines that I probably wouldn't have done anywhere else. But ultimately, I got to identify and reinvent how you sell events inside of a content company. And what drove me there was audience was always the most important thing in the world. And I recognized that there was a way to change perception of what a consumer thought of like a traditional brand by way of engaging with them on the ground. So started to do that. And ultimately for about 2 to 2.5 years, put together this like skunk work journey of how you scale non-traditional revenue inside of a media organization. Got a call and got a call to the principal's office. Actually, it was the COO of Viacom at the time, Sarah Levy, and she was like, "Hey, can you explain to me what you're doing here?" And I was like, "Great. Do you get fired normally by being called to the COO's office?" And The answer was no, you don't. But they wanted me to explain what I was doing and how I was driving revenue and how this large best-in-class sales force wasn't. So I walked through just sort of what I thought was very simple, that different sorts of media has different sorts of audiences and different sorts of buyers around all that, and it's about developing what that pipeline was. So they asked me to put together a pitch, and I did that. And then ultimately, when I gave the pitch, they said congratulations to me, and I thought I was going to be like the owner operator of the event business inside of a media company. Instead, it became my transition fully into like a revenue generating role, and they're like, no, 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 you're going to lead the sales org. So that was in 2019, and lo and behold, get the keys to a brand new car basically, and then pandemic hits, and what I thought was like my ride just collapsed around me. We were really successful out of the gate, but it required me to make a ton of phone calls apologizing for having to give money back because of just like a force majeure, right? Like, so it was a real dark time, but looking for constant reinvention and the fact that audience is always the most important thing, I quickly dove headfirst into the creator space, right into content, digital first social solutions, and with that was given the opportunity to pitch a new business unit inside of Paramount, which was the creative business, creative revenue team, which is basically all things non-traditional inside of a traditional media org. And thesis was you run independent to the IP, but lean into the IP when you need to. So we really had free range to run, talk to clients, ladder up to things like the VMAs or the Grammys, but also just run our own independent white label campaigns. So it was a really great entrepreneurial type role because I got to act as like the lead and the head of growth for what theoretically was like a creative agency. So it was a really, really rewarding experience. And then right before I left Paramount and went over to the NBA, I was able to get the entire organization to see the value of where sports was going and how modern day athletes were no longer these like pedestal type athletes that you couldn't connect with. They're our age, they're the consumer's age, and they want connectivity and immediacy to them. So I was able to pitch what ultimately became the CBS Sports Creator Studio, which was running creators adjacent to the sports portfolio, whether it be NFL, NWSL, bull riding, college football. And then that led me on my path to be part of the reinvention of the NBA 2K League into NBA Take Two Media, where I was overseeing the commercial side of all of that. So yeah, so that's a long origin story, but it got me there.
No, this is the director's cut. This is the Zack Snyder cut.
Yeah.
No, this is great. And I think for me, like, there's definitely a lot of themes which I think a lot of people find like relevant and resonant. It's about kind of following your interests and following where you want to
Yeah.
be, but also evolving with the times and dealing with like there's so many like unpredictable things that kind of
Oh,
happens in our
absolutely.
careers. And like the moments you think are like these big like unveilings can be the ones where you're on the precipice and you kind of take a little fall. And I think I'll definitely kind of plug to the audience to follow you on LinkedIn. I think a lot of great
Yeah, yeah.
posts you share about like navigating those moments and how to deal with that and how to, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, right, there's no playbook for anything. And I think complacency is what derails a lot of people. Right. Like I'm not saying that you should look for friction for the sake of friction's sake, but if there is no friction in what your career is, there's never actually going to be any growth whatsoever, right? Like, I like to say that you should always sort of live in the gap, right? Because if there is no gap between you and excellence, that means you're status quo and you're complacent, and that sucks because the end result is whether it's like an accounting job or a creative job or whatever, if you are not driving to be the best at what you're doing, or if you think you already are, then you have total misperception of what's actually going on. So if you are not constantly looking at what I just did, how do I improve upon that? How does that evolve? Then there's something wrong with the like not look, maybe some people don't want to, but I believe everything needs reflection, right? Like it's great to applause the moment and say, hey, we did a great job here. But if you're not thinking about how do I improve, what could have been tighter, what do we drop next year, you're never going to be the best, right? Like the best always have to continue to drive, drive, and drive. And I'm a big, big believer and advocate of that. Like it's always like, how do you continue to improve what that looks like? So yeah, complacency is something I am not a fan of. And I think that leads to how you start as like something that's sponsor marketing inside of a major media company to suddenly being able to write like soft licenses for like IP against Yellowstone or being able to go rogue in skunkworks and start to monetize like events adjacent to TV temples and not get in trouble, but actually ask, hey, how'd you do that? That's cool, right? And I think there are a lot of stories like that where people just push slightly outside of the lane, and then there's sort of recognition that there's opportunity around all of that. I'm not saying they always hit, but hey.
No, I think it's definitely kind of it's that double-edged kind of viewpoint of like not being complacent, being maybe perceived sort of as restless, but having the temerity to push through even when it doesn't hit and kind of consistently kind of try to think and reinvent. Definitely love that. Let's talk a little bit about kind of, as much as you're able, I'm sure there might be some like restrictions in place, but kind of about what you're doing currently kind of with the NBA and Take-Two.
Yeah. So what I've been doing for look, I'll be honest with you, I'm about to wrap that up. But what I have been doing is working with them on the commercial reinvention of what the 2K League was. 2K League launched to a lot of fanfare, right? But it launched with a lot of fanfare, just as everything else in the esports space has. And what we quickly recognized is that it was a business that needed to have more connectivity to the audience. So the reinvention of that is really leaning into everything that I've done in my past run while I was at Paramount. It's how do you create something where you bridge the gap between consumer content and fan, and create something that is so necessary that you're cultivating fandom. I mean, if you follow me on LinkedIn, which we do, right? Like I talk about the irrational behavior of fandom, right? It's the only thing that can live outside of the game. It's the group chats, it's the fantasy sports, it's you're buying the unique drop that costs $3,000 because you want to show how unique your fandom is to something. So it's about creating something that becomes a part of that, right? And in doing that, like the thesis is that you're pivoting the business to become a modern day entertainment company and being where the audience is. And when you look at where Gen Z is, Gen Z, while they will watch traditional big glass, big TV, they're on their phone, they're on their devices. They want access, right? They want authenticity. They don't want it to be full of friction. They want what they want when they want it. And they also want to see the true authentic side of whoever that talent is, which is why you have folks like Jared McCain talk about his mental health and wear nail polish, which is something you'd probably never ever see like a Michael Jordan do, right? So it's about building on that sort of momentum around sort of the zeitgeist of sports right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like you have like another great example to me is like the OKC team that just kind of was so dominant kind of in this last season, had such a strong social media presence and one that is so accessible and kind of being able to embrace both sides. And I mean, also the Pacers and Tyrese and like everything that's going on there, definitely.
Right.
Very strong.
Well, athletes have so much more agency with how they articulate who they are and what their brand is, which is something that eluded previous generation, right? Like everybody used to think they had to be like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, or Derek Jeter, which was very respectful. You know what I mean? Like they were these like stoic figures that didn't really communicate a lot, but they were known for like that's who you wanted in crunch time. When you can still want those people in crunch time when the moment matters, but they also love to invest in tech. They love to go out and eat. Mental health is a real thing, right? Like, and that's how you build fandom that lives offside the court. So yeah.
So now switching gears a little bit, I'm going to ask you to kind of to put on your prognosticator's hat, as it were.
Yeah.
What do you think kind of is the future of the business in terms of integrated brand experiences, in terms of content, whether it's sports or entertainment, as kind of is in a way kind of like things are kind of starting to consolidate again? And
absolutely. Well, you said it right there. Again, like everything that is old is new again. I dislike the conversation of like YouTube taking over TV, because let's just be real. It's all about content delivery. It doesn't matter what the platform is. It's about content and how you engage who the consumer is at the end of the day. So if you get that through YouTube, or if you get that through some streaming service, cheers to you. What that means is you as a content provider needs to figure out how you have strategy across all of those platforms so that you're getting in front of those eyeballs, right? It's not one or the other. So like I dislike this I dislike this idea of like it's either this way or it's that way. It's like, no, guys, we're all in this together. It's all about content delivery, right? So like this idea of creators as studios, creators overtaking media companies. Yes, maybe there's something to it, but like let's be real, those creators also want to be on Amazon. They also want to be on Tubi. So it's like It's about how are you omnipresent. I think where sports is going, sports needs to continue to think about is a reinvention with how we engage. And I think there are a lot of brands. Well, there are some brands that are doing it really well. Like the NFL has a very sound sort of like Gen Z off the field strategy with how they engage and what that looks like. But I think when you reside in a world where there's a lot of fragmentation and it becomes harder for consumers to figure out how they watch their favorite team play because of the way rights deals are set up, the leagues themselves need to figure out, okay, how do we create better connectivity to our consumers so that we could usher them through and make sure that they're there with us throughout that entire journey. And what does that mean? Like it's hard to say. I do think what you're going to probably see, or what I would love to see, is more vertical integration of like partnerships that utilize players and ancillary talent to deliver on message and provide value, right? I see that as being a big opportunity. And then I just think it's really about even inside of some of these larger orgs, stop thinking of, social as new media. It's media, man. And if you're not thinking of it as media, just like people were thinking of creators as nice to have as a part of, instead of as being part of the media mix, you're missing the boat. So it's like, how do you start to think and forecast for what the future is going to hold?
Yeah, a lot of like just like the holistic strategy. And I mean, these small things that stick out to me was even like the decision to include like airing the lineups on TV, the lineup announcements, like really kind of integrating people into the experience and kind of bridging
Yeah.
that physical virtual divide.
Well, but that's also why all leagues should probably lean into things like fantasy sports, right? It builds fandom across league as opposed to just your vertical, which is your favorite team, right? Like for me, I'm in the Northeast. Like let's put it through the lens of football. Like I love the Giants. Giants are having a horrible year, but because I play with all of my friends in a fantasy league, I care about what's happening on the West Coast with the Rams, right? And the Chargers, because I need to make sure I score enough points. So it's smart to figure out how you lean into things that allow you to gamify and actually provide awareness across the league, right? Like, growing up for me, and I'm going to date myself here, but like I had Mariano Rivera as like the closer of the Yankees. He was the best. But there was always this sort of like, Trevor Hoffman might be pretty good because I see what his stats are by way of playing fantasy baseball. So you'd always sort of then dare have the conversation. Could Trevor Hoffman be better than Mariano? No, absolutely not. But because fantasy sports introduced you to all of these other great players, you have appreciation for the talent across the league, and it creates different sort of viral fandoms. And that percolates over into like gaming licenses, right? Like how often, or if you were to survey Gen A, right? How much you want to bet that NBA 2K or Madden or FIFA is their first foray into sports fandom, right? Like they're like if they're 10 years old, they're watching cartoons. Let's be real, right? They're just learning to, hey, I watch a PG-13 movie. They probably aren't watching sports, or maybe a small portion is, but they're playing a Steph Curry in NBA 2K, and suddenly they're building this fandom for Steph Curry, even though he's on the other side of the country. So then when Steph comes to play the Knicks, they're like, I want to watch that game, or I want to go to that game. So it's really important to dip and be where the audience is. Like I think one of the most impactful things somebody had ever said to me is, how do you make your brand famous? And the easiest way to make your brand famous is by putting your brand where the audience is, as opposed to being the lightning rod to make them come to you.
No, this is all, and there's definitely a lot of points that I relate to in terms of like of that experience and my own experience of playing your Nintendo 64 NBA games and knowing players only because of that. And kind of just, the holistic experience. Another thing
Yeah.
I thought about is like college sports and like tracking
Yeah.
players from March Madness all the way into the NBA. And I'm fans of
Absolutely.
teams of players that I remember watching. Kind of like I remember watching Jalen Brunson in Villanova. I'm like, when is he
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
surface? And he finally did. I was really excited. So
Yeah,
definitely,
absolutely. Absolutely, right? Like and that's an entirely different level if you're going into like the stat head domain. Oh my gosh. But also the amount of detail and information that is available to you now, which is something that past consumer did not have. You could just go to Google and ask for Jalen Brunson's entire like playing career, and you can figure out to the day and time how he performs in the evening on the road if there's like 12 Dunkin' Donuts in the market that he's playing at. Like it's absolutely ridiculous.
this is incredible. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Adam, for coming
Yeah,
on the show today.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.